Parliamentary reform, this agenda, this particular topic, many people, I think in particular MPs, in particular academicians have been talking about for many years. But there is no initiative on the part of Malaysian Parliament to push for reform until very recently. I think in the past, all these reform agendas, all these proposals are there. But no one is taking it up. The speaker is not serious about pushing for reform. But until recently, until this year, I think one of the reasons is that after 2008, the Malaysian political scenario has changed. Right now, we have 3 states, 2 in particular governed by DAP and PKR, in particular in Selangor, in Penang. In Selangor in particular, where we see a very reform state assembly post-2008, where there are a lot of new initiatives in Selangor post-2008. And I think that gives a lot of pressure to our parliament to reform, to change some of the systems in our parliament. Until this year, just recently, a few months ago, the speaker initiated some proposals for reform. I'm sure many of you will still remember that just a few months ago, the speaker had boycotted parliament for about a month, even though he did not say it publicly that he boycotted, but he did not chair any session for about a month over some unhappiness about how parliament was run. So after that, he came back. Of course, there was this rumors saying that he resigned from his post. Mahathir make it public, and then he retracted. The speaker, after that, initiated some meetings in the parliament, in particular House Committee, to initiate reform agendas in parliament. I'm one of the members of the House Committee, so we had a few meetings since June. And then I just want to share with you some of the expectations that what we can expect from Malaysian Parliament on parliamentary reform. Those are the I would say, very simple things, very common things in other parliaments. But in Malaysian Parliament, this is something extraordinary. Next slide, please. First of all, one of the first things that we are talking about, and we have been talking about for many years, is to have more functioning committees. In Malaysian Parliament, under the standing order, there are only 5 permanent committees. Number 1, Selection Committee. 2nd, Public Accounts Committee. 3rd, Standing Order Committee. 4th, House Committee. 5th, Rights and Privileges Committee. Out of these 5 committees, only 1 who has some related relation with the executive is to balance up or to provide check and balance to the executive. That is Public Accounts Committee. Public Accounts Committee in any other Commonwealth countries, the Public Accounts Committee usually is chaired by the opposition member of parliament, one of the MP from the opposition. But in our country, since independence, it has never been the case. It's only recently, after 2008, in Selangor, in the state of Selangor, in the State Legislative Assembly, we changed the standing order to make it compulsory that the opposition leader in Selangor to be the chair of the Public Accounts Committee. But unfortunately, in Selangor, the opposition leader is from UMNO. And by his position as opposition leader, he must be the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. But because of that, he resigned from the opposition leader. He cannot take up because of pressure from the federal leadership. Because if they take up the PAC committee chairperson in Selangor, then they are forced to concede the chairmanship of PAC in parliament for the opposition. So because of that, he refused to take up the PAC chairman and he resigned from the opposition leader post. Even though the Selangor opposition leader post comes with a lot of perks, including a free car, a driver, and so on and so forth. But he has to give up everything just because that he do not want to take up the PAC chairman post. Okay, besides the Public Accounts Committee, the 4 other committees are actually nothing to do with check and balance. It's basically about just internal matters on the House. Firstly, Selection Committee. The role of the Selection Committee is just to select members. It's not a select committee by itself. The role of Selection Committee is just to select members, select MPs to sit in other committees. That sounds very funny. That is the only role for the Selection Committee. So basically, Selection Committee only meets once in 5 years. After Parliament, they have a Selection Committee. Usually a Selection Committee, the various people who are in the Selection Committee are the Deputy Prime Minister, in his position as the chief whip for the ruling party. And then there are 3 other members, usually are the head of parties, ruling component parties in Barisan Nasional. Currently, the members of selection committee is Liew, president of MCA. Second is Parliamentary, president of MIC. But because of the position of Parliamentary is not very clear whether he's president of MIC or not, that's why there are voices from UMNO saying that Parliamentary is not considered a member of selection committee because he's no longer a president of MIC. That's why Azalina talked about to change the member of selection committee. Because Muhyiddin is no longer the DPM, he cannot be in the selection committee. And Parliamentary, because he's no longer the president of MIC, he also should not be in the selection committee. So that's why before we can choose who is the chairman of PAC, you have to change the members of selection committee first. Okay, and then there are 2 members from opposition in the selection committee right now. That is Lim Kee Siang, representing DAP, and supposedly Anwar Ibrahim. But because of his case, then we need to change the other member to Kat1, to Datin Sri Wan Azizah, as the member of selection committee representing the opposition. So as I said, the selection committee is just to choose the other members of the other committees. So in order for PAC, all other members are chosen by the selection committee, with the exception of the chairman and deputy chairman of PAC, where even after suggestions, they have to bring the nomination to the House for approval, for adoption. But all other members of other committees, they do not need the adoption from the House. Standing Order Committee, the role of the Standing Order Committee is just to look at the standing orders. If there are no amendments to the standing order, they do not need to meet for 5 years. So I think the Standing Orders Committee have not met since 2013 because there's no amendment. Even only after there is a proposal to amend the standing orders, then they need to meet. If not, they do not need to have any meeting. The House Committee, where I'm a member, the role of the House Committee is basically just to take care of the welfare of the MPs. It's basically talking about their allowances, the facilities in Parliament, and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, this House Committee in the past only met once or twice in 5 years. But in this particular term, something special, because the Speaker wanted to exert his pressure, exert his authority, because he is the chairman of the House Committee, and he uses this House Committee to push for parliamentary reform. That's why in this year alone, we already had 3 to 4 meetings just to discuss about parliamentary reforms. In the past, within 5 years, probably the maximum they met is only for two times. So House Committee, besides looking at the facilities, the privileges and welfare of the MPs, right now we also talk about parliamentary reform. And 5th is the Rights and Privileges Committee. If any MPs was found making some statements unparliamentary or referred by the House to this Rights and Privileges Committee, then they have to face the Rights and Privileges Committee, and then any punishment should come from this committee. So there are 5 current committees. The proposal is to have more functioning committees in our Malaysian Parliament. In any other parliament, there are many select committees to look after various ministries, to provide check and balance to the various ministries. But that is a rare thing in Malaysian Parliament. We never had that. That's why most of the MPs, the only chance for MPs, Malaysian MPs, to debate, to participate in our role and to question the government is through Q&A in Parliament and debate. So in some cases, for example, in Malaysian Parliament, when we have our budget session, MPs will take turns to debate. So some younger MPs, some newer MPs, probably they have to wait after 2 weeks. All the seniors have spoken. The final 1 or 2 days, they have the chance to speak. And at a time, they are only given 5 to 10 minutes to speak, to debate the budget motion. So other than that, they have little chance to talk, to speak, and to debate. So that's why we want to push for committee where every MP should be a member of a committee, where they are interested in certain topics, and then they can play their role. They can question the various ministries in the committee and to discuss any bills or motions or any policies regarding that particular ministries. That's why we are pushing for more committees. So the proposal that the House Committee has basically agreed upon is to have established more committees. Firstly, it's a committee on consideration of bills. Why we need to have these committees? is because most of the bills in Malaysian Parliament are rushed through. They're basically presented to Parliament today, and they expect it to be debated 2 days later, and then passed on the same day. So most of the time, when government wants to push through bills, they will just propose the bill for first reading on Monday, and then they expect it to be passed on Wednesday. So that happened most of the time in Malaysian Parliament. That's why we need to have a committee to consider bills. Most of the time when bills are rushed through, there are many mistakes in the bills. There are many things that are not thought through. And when MPs raise up issues, some of the issues, the executive know that they are in the wrong. That's why they pull back the bills at the committee stage. So in order not to embarrass the government any further, so we propose these bills. And the government is actually very ready to accept this proposal, because there have been many instances, many cases that they feel very embarrassed because they have to withdraw the bills after second reading. So that's why this committee on consideration of bills basically were accepted by the ruling parties as well. So they agreed to form up this committee, at least in the House committee level. Second is to have a budget committee, where you have a committee to go through the budget, to criticize, to provide check and balance, to consider the budget, and to see, monitor the progress of the budget operations, and so on, year round. Third is to have a committee on order of business. This committee is basically to fix what are the businesses every day, what are business of the house for every day. Nowadays, because all parliamentary business is basically fixed by the government, or in particular the minister in charge of parliamentary affairs. He or she has the power to basically or the influence to fix the business of the day. That's why we need to have a committee where you have both government and opposition to discuss what are the order of the business of the day. Next. Other select committees that we have agreed upon is to have a Security Affairs Committee, Foreign Affairs Committee, Education Committee, Health and Food Security Committee, Energy, Environment and Water Committee, Rural Wellbeing Committee, and Economic Affairs Committee. Those are the committees that monitor the progress of the various ministries. Those are the important issues that we think is important enough to have a committee. In most parliaments, in particular in the UK Parliament, you have a committee against each ministry. For example, you have a Ministry of Defence, there is a committee on defence. You have a Ministry of Education, there's a committee on education. If we need to have a committee for every ministries, we need to have about 30 committees in Malaysian Parliament. So we think that for the beginning, we push for only a few committees. At least if the government agrees to this, this is a good progress to start off with. Next. The second reform agenda that we are talking about, and basically the speaker is very gung-ho to push forward, is to have the minister's questions time. The current practice in Malaysian Parliament is that each MP can ask 10 oral and 5 written questions for each session, but with 14 working day notice before the beginning of the session. So every MP can ask 10 oral and 5 written. But not all 10 oral questions are answered in the House. So every day, you only have about 8 to 10 questions are being answered orally. So questions which are not answered orally by a minister or deputy minister will be given a written answer. But nevertheless, the problem in this system is that by the time the questions comes up in Parliament, many questions are outdated or taken over by events. For example, for the coming session, all questions must be submitted by 28th of September. But the last sitting day is on 3rd of December. So it means that when you submit questions on the 28th of September, possibility that one of your questions will be answered on 3rd of December. That is 2 months later. So imagine you ask the questions that is answered 2 months later. Most of the time, those questions are already outdated. Minister's questions time that we are proposing is that 2 days in a week, Tuesday and Thursday, 10 to 10:30 a.m., where you do not need any notice. Any MPs can just stand up and ask questions. Of course, that is something that we have agreed upon in the House Committee, whether we can be done or not. That is very much depends on the commitment by the government. What we have proposed is that the formula is that 1 minute to ask and 2 minutes to answer. After 1 minute, the MP must sit down if the questions is still not asked. So 1 minute to ask, 2 minutes to answer. And the respective party whips will communicate with the minister on what are the likely issues to be raised on the next day. So no notice given, no questions given. Anybody can stand up. But the problem is that this is not PM's questions. So if Prime Minister's questions, only the Prime Ministers appear there. But I don't think they are ready for Prime Minister's questions. Najib is not ready, definitely. So in exchange, they propose that at least the Minister's questions, at least the Ministers will be there. But there are 27 ministers who will be there every day. Not every minister will be there every day. So we will come up with a system where before each minister's questions time, a day earlier, we will discuss among the whips and we communicate with the government. So what are the likely issues tomorrow? So the respective ministers will stand by and to come to Parliament to answer the questions by the MPs. Next. Third reform that we have sort of agreed upon is to create a second chamber. Of course, this is something that Chin Tong feels very passionate about. He has been talking about a second chamber for many years, since I think 2008. He has been talking about this in parliamentary speeches. The current practice, all business of the House are conducted in the Dewan. Standing Order 15 says that priority for all government business. So every day, everything proposed by the government must be settled first before any other things can be considered. So by the time you reach the time to conclude the Parliament session, most of the government business is still not settled yet. So any other business will not be considered. The only other things that, besides debates on motions or bills proposed by the government, MPs can only raise up emergency motion through 18.1, what we call 18.1 in Parliament. That is emergency motion that you can give a notice to the Speaker 1 day earlier, and then if the Speaker allows, you can raise up a particular issue at 4:30 on a sitting day. Besides 18.1, another device that MPs can use is to have this adjournment speech, where you must give a written speech, maximum 400 words, and the Speaker only allows you to read out the speech in the House. No other debates. You cannot debate. No other speeches by any other MPs during your speech. So only you read out the speech and 400 words maximum, and allowed only during second session of the year. During the first session where the Agong opens the day one, and the third session where the budget session, adjournment speech are not allowed. This was changed, I think, during the 70s, where at the time, I was told by Saudara Kisiang, one of the reasons why this was changed is because Kisiang used every day to put in adjournment speech. So the government limited it, and only allowed during second session of the year. Second chamber will deal with 18.1 and adjournment speeches. No more rejection by Speaker on 18.1. So most of the time, the Speaker will not allow any emergency motion. His reason is that if I allow emergency motion every day, it will take the time of the Parliament. So if you have a second chamber, the Speaker has given the commitment that he will not reject any more 18.1. Anyone who have an emergency motion, they can raise up in the second chamber. And adjournment speeches can be delivered all year round, during all sessions, every day, if you have a second chamber. So more time and opportunities for MPs to raise up specific or constituency issue in the second chamber. But second chamber, of course, will not have that kind of aura as the main chamber. Because second chamber, the quorum is only 3%. One is the chairman, should be a deputy speaker, and another is the MP who want to speak on the adjournment speech or to raise up the emergency motion, and one representative from the government, either a minister or deputy minister. 3% makes up the quorum of the second chamber. But of course, on the same day, it can have many adjournment speeches, many 18.1 together. So in practical, probably there are more MPs in the second chamber if it is allowed. Daily order paper for second chamber will be prepared by the clerk of the House, and then it's just like the main chamber. What are the businesses, what are the agendas in the second chamber will be made known to the MPs every day. Next, final slide. The fourth agenda for reform is the revival of Parliamentary Services Act. Current practice, Parliament is not treated as an institution. It's just like another government department under Prime Minister's department. Under our Malaysian system, it's basically, even though Parliament is supposed to be an institution, but it's not treated as one. Because if you look at the functions of Parliament, most of the powers of Parliament are resided elsewhere. For example, funding for Parliament is decided by the Ministry of Finance. The yearly budget for our Parliament is only around 80 million ringgit. So for your information, Permata, one of the agency under Prime Minister's Department, to provide this preschool education under the auspices of our First Lady, Datin Sri Rosma. The budget for Permata is more than 100 million a year. For Parliament, it's only 80 million. Another department, Biro Tata Negara, the department that conducts ceramah, conducts sessions where opposition is the enemy of the state. That department has about 50 million a year. Parliament only has 80 millions. So funding for Parliament everything is decided by Ministry of Finance. You do not have enough money, you have to beg the Minister of Finance for more money. Parliamentary staff is not hired or fired by the Parliamentary Services Commission. Parliamentary staff are all under the PSD, Public Service Department, or the JPA. Parliamentary building, the building itself is not owned by Parliament. If you need to have renovation, right now, the current project to renovate, to upgrade the Parliament, everything is under JKR, or the Public Works Department. So that's why one of the reasons why the Speaker was so unhappy is that the renovation of Parliament, the Speaker is not consulted. Where the toilet should be located, where the toilet should be situated, the Speaker was not consulted. That's why he was very unhappy, and at the time, he made a point not to chair for 1 month, to make a point. So everything is not under Parliament. What we want to suggest is to revive the Parliamentary Services Act and set up a Parliamentary Service Commission to ensure the independence of Parliament from executive in terms of administration, management, finance, staffing, etc. And to be followed by all state legislative assemblies. If you want to talk about parliamentary reform, it's not just the federal parliament. Even at the state level, the state legislative assemblies must follow suit. Because the separation of power between legislature and executive is not happening in our country. In most of the states, for example, one very important separation is not happening. Even the clerk of the house, he or she, the clerk of the house, at the same time, he or she is also the secretary of the state exco. So it serves both the executive and legislature at the same time. So there's no separation between legislature and executive at most state legislative assemblies, for exception of Selangor, where Selangor is moving forward to set up a service commission for the state legislature to separate the role between legislature and executive.